Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming today. Very happy to introduce an old friend here, only longtime friend, Jodi Tolman. Not old, no, from Oasis Senior Advisors, and she's going to be presenting her signature program, Getting Savvy About Senior Living. And I'll hand it over to Jodi now. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. First of all, I want to thank Deb and Carrie and everybody here at the COA for inviting us to come and talk with you. We're really so happy to be here. And we have what I think and what I hope you'll feel is a wonderful and very informative program. So let me introduce myself and I'll introduce Bill. I am Jodi Tolman, and I spent 15 years in the senior living industry in sales, working in various communities, some brand new that I sold before they were even open, some existing communities, in independent living, assisted living, memory care, and so forth. So I know my way around the senior living industry. Bill Cleary is the owner/advisor of Oasis Senior Advisors, who works in this part of the world. And if you should decide that you're ready to begin to educate yourself about senior living, Bill is the person you want to talk with. So our objective for our goal for our time together, first of all, can everybody hear me perfectly well? You guys in the back too? Excellent. I wear hearing aids, and when I can't hear, I want to kill somebody. But I'm a very patient person, trust me. So our objective for our time together today is to really inform you and educate you about senior living in general, but in very granular detail. So we'll talk about senior living in all facets. And of course, the overarching objective, once you hear and learn about how much you need to know in order to make a good decision that you feel comfortable with and confident in, then the question becomes, how do you get the answers to all of those questions? How do you find out what you need to know in order to make a good decision? And we will answer that question. How can you find out everything you need to know? So the handout that you've been given has a notes page on the back. Hopefully you have a pen. And this will be a very interactive conversation. I have no PowerPoint. We're just going to talk. And so if you have questions at any point along the way, please just raise your hand. We're not going to save questions till the end. If you have a question in the midst of this conversation, you just raise your hand, okay? So the first thing to discuss is, what is senior living? Senior living consists of various components. It could be just what's called a 55-plus community. Typically, that's an apartment community of some sort. And typically, it does not offer any amenities. It does not offer meals. It does not offer activities. It may have a game room or a meeting room, that sort of thing. But it's designed for folks who are 55 and above, but offers no real services and amenities. The next level up is what's called independent living. And typically, most often, you'll find independent living and the other tiers that we'll talk about on one campus. So you may find independent living, and not all campuses include independent living. Some do, some don't. Independent living is for folks like yourself who are independent, who do not need care services or may need minimal care services, but who are ready to get out from under the maintenance of their home, would like to be in a community that offers activities, that offers neighbors and the opportunities for more social engagement. But typically people in independent living need no or they need minor levels of service. Okay? Now, on the same campus, you may find the next levels of care, the next tiers, and the next one up from independent living is assisted living. First of all, let me ask you a question. How many of you have started to think about or look into, started to do a little research about senior living? About almost half of you. Let me also ask you a couple of other questions, and then I'll continue. There are several mindsets that people are in at I'm 71, so I'm not far from where you guys are. And so people in your and my age range fall into a number of different mindset categories. And I'm curious to know which mindset you are in. How many of you will say, I ain't leaving, you're going to have to take me out of this house in a pine box? Raise your hand. And you're not alone by any means. How many of you say, I ain't going until and unless I have to? If there's a crisis and I can't be at home anymore, maybe then I'll go. How many of you fall into that category? And how many of you are just a little more forward-thinking than that and say, I don't know what I think. I just need to educate myself and figure out what's out there and what my options are. How many of you are in that category? Excellent. So whatever category you're in, you are very wise to do the research. Whether you're years away from making a move, whether you feel like you want to make a move yesterday, you are very wise to educate yourselves and learn about what's out there and what the process is. You cannot make a better decision than to be informed. And I'll tell you this, and then I'll get back to the content. If you walk away from our time together, with nothing else, if you walk away with one thing in your mind, here's what I want it to be. And I speak from 15 years of professional experience, and I speak out of a crisis situation with my dad years ago. The last thing on this earth that you want to do is wait for a crisis and then start to do research or think about or start to make decisions. At that point, all control is out of your hands. Somebody else may be making decisions for you. You have very little, many fewer options at that point. You want to do the research now, and I hope that will stay in your mind as we talk today and after we leave one another. So, independent living. The next level is, are you good? I'm fine. Oh, good. The next level is assisted living, and there are two types of assisted living. One is called traditional assisted living, and one is called memory care assisted living. And we'll talk about memory care in a moment. Traditional assisted living is designed for those folks who are relatively independent, but do need some support with what are called the activities of daily living. Activities of daily living include meal preparation and getting good nourishment throughout your day. Personal hygiene, perhaps. Help getting up and ready for the day and help getting ready for bed in the evening. Perhaps help getting from point A to point B. Those are the activities of daily living. If somebody needs some support and some assistance with those ADLs, then assisted living, traditional assisted living, may be what's right for you. Memory care. Memory care is a very specific environment. Memory care is designed for folks whose cognitive impairment rises to the level where they are not safe or cannot be well enough cared for in a traditional assisted living setting. So who is that person? That's a person, there are various characteristics, for lack of a better word, of that level of dementia. A person who is exit seeking. A person who feels the need, and sometimes the desperate need, to get out, to be elsewhere. Somebody, 90-year-old Mary Jones, may say to the director, I've got to go. My mother is waiting for me. She's waiting dinner on me. I have to get home. Well, Mary's 90 and her mom has been gone for some time. So that's a person who is exit seeking, or what is sometimes called an elopement risk. That person, if they are not at home with 24/7 care, which is astronomically expensive, but for some folks, that's an option. If family cannot care for Mary on a 24/7 basis, if she is at risk of leaving the house, she needs to be in a memory care setting. And something I'd like to say about memory care, about senior living in general, and this is very, very important. A lot of folks, a lot of older folks have one frame of reference for senior living. And that is a stinky nursing home where people go to drool in a corner and wait to die. And how many of you have been in that sort of place? I have. They're horrible. And thank God there are fewer and fewer and fewer places like that. We've learned so much. So much has been, so much innovation has been made in nursing home care. Assisted living is in no way resembles what that is. It's not an institutional setting. It's not a medical setting. The right community, you're not going to smell anything other than something wonderful. You're not going to see people at that level of care and that level of need. So one of the myths I want to bust in our time together is, if you are of the mind that senior living, I don't want to go there. And there are plenty of adult children, by the way, who will say to me, have said to me in my time of working with them, will say to me, I promised my mother I'd never put her in a place like that. I promised her. Well, and what I will say is, what you promised your mother is to be the best daughter to her you can possibly be, and to provide the highest quality of life and the best care that you can possibly provide. And that may be in a place that you would never think of. So what you want to do, if you have any mindset, any opinions that these are horrible places, or maybe they're just, it's a wonderful lifestyle. We compare it to living on a cruise ship. And I've worked on cruise ships, so I know. We want you to love your cabin, and we want you to come out of your cabin and enjoy everything on deck that the cruise has to offer. And I can tell you that what these cruises offer is quite phenomenal. It's a fabulous lifestyle. When it comes to memory care, I'll tell you a story. There are many people who are of the mind that memory care is just the most horrible thing there is for someone with dementia. And in many cases, it is quite the opposite. I worked in a community. There was a resident in our traditional assisted living, non-memory assisted living, named Phyllis. Phyllis clearly had dementia. Phyllis was a miserable, incredibly unhappy, even nasty person. I worked in that community for several years. Phyllis never acknowledged me. She didn't know my name, or didn't seem to know my name. And we, management, talked to Phyllis's children for some time, saying, your mom needs to be in memory care. Finally, after a couple of years of trying to make the case for Phyllis to her family, finally, they really couldn't deny it any longer, and Phyllis moved into the memory care neighborhood in this community. Phyllis, 2 weeks later, I took a family into the memory care community to show them the community, the neighborhood, as we call it, for their mother. And when I went into the community, Phyllis was sitting there, and she said, Jodi, How are you? I haven't seen you for a while. It's so nice to see you. I almost fell over. So Phyllis was now in a position where she no longer had to compensate and try to accommodate and try to hide where she was cognitively, and it freed her to be exactly where she was. And it was literally transformative. And I have chills. I always have chills when I remember Phyllis. So that's something to keep in mind. Another thing to know, there are many people who will say, I'm a little bit forgetful, or I'm a lot forgetful. Do I need to be in memory care? And the answer is no. That by itself does not necessitate memory care. There are many, many people all over the place living in traditional assisted living, maybe even in independent living, who have some degree of cognitive impairment. If you have the capacity to engage with your environment, engage with the staff and the residents, if you have the capacity to enjoy activities and so forth, even if it requires somebody knocking on your door and saying, Joan, we've got bingo. I know you love bingo. It's in the lounge at 2 o'clock. 5 minutes. Would you like me to take? That's fine too. So a little bit of, sometimes it's referred to as pleasantly confused. So a little bit of pleasant confusion does not indicate that you are in need of memory care. But when a person rises to that level of their safety is questioned, then that's a conversation that needs to happen. So, independent living, assisted living, memory care, and the next level, and some campuses include this level, most do not, fewer and fewer do, but there are still some that have a skilled nursing facility on their campus. Skilled nursing is the highest level of care there is, and it is a medical, clinical setting. It's for someone who needs, perhaps they're bedbound and a device called a Hoyer lift is necessary to get them out of bed, to the bathroom, to a chair, and so forth. Somebody who needs medical care on a 24/7 basis. That's skilled nursing. Also, very, very important to know is that most seniors, the majority of seniors, never need that level of care. Most senior living communities, most assisted living communities can care for residents in their communities as they age in place. Additional services can be brought in if necessary. Hospice can be brought in if necessary. So keep that in mind as well. Most folks will live out their life in an assisted living setting. And you would work very closely with that community's team, with the executive director, with the resident care director, to determine if you or maybe your daughter or son are talking to the team. And a determination will be made as to whether that community can continue to care for you or your loved one. Are there any questions about the levels of care? Boy, I'm good. Okay. When is the right time to think about senior living? In my opinion, the time is now. The time is now to begin, as I say, to, at the very least, educate yourselves about what's out there. And the research can be overwhelming, and we'll talk about that too. But as I said, you do not want to wait for a crisis. You do not even want to wait necessarily for a significant health challenge. You want to start to do the research now. It costs nothing to educate yourselves and really inform yourselves. It is time consuming, but it's time very, very well spent. So the time to make a move, two things. The healthier you are physically and the healthier you are cognitively, the better it is to make a move. the better time it is to make a move. Yes, well, let me just finish my sentence and then I'll come to your question. Because, as I said, it's a fantastic lifestyle. You want to make the move if budget allows, and we'll talk about that too. You want to make the move while you can enjoy everything that that lifestyle has to offer. Yes, ma'am.
Now, this might be a little premature, but my question would be, and I agree with everything you've said so far, and I have had experience because my parents went into senior living facility many years ago.
Yes.
And anyway, my brother and I had to go through that process, so we got educated.
Yep.
And now things have changed drastically.
Exactly right.
Because of cost and everything else. But would you, or do you recommend that when you start thinking about this is the time, now is the time, and many of the people in this room are over 80,
Yep.
and there are some of us that are over 70. There's not the over 60, I don't know.
Yep.
60 and over, I don't know. But my question is, do you recommend, as an organization that can be very helpful, to do estate planning before you start looking?
Yes. Yet, did all of you hear the question? Is estate planning before you start looking a good idea? It doesn't necessarily have to be before you start looking, but it should be at least simultaneously. And so you bring me to a very important thing that I want to share with you. I have some homework assignments for you. And that's the first homework assignment. You want to get your head around and get your arms around your financial picture. You want to know what are your assets or lack thereof, what is your income, what is your house. How many of you own a home? Almost everyone in the room. You want to talk to a realtor right now and find out what your house would likely sell for in this market, or in what they might be expecting, if they're expecting changes in the market. You want to find out what your house is valued at. You want to really learn about your financial picture in granular detail, because that is going to determine what is affordable for you and what is the best fitting community. Okay? And that, at the end of the day, that's your objective, is to find the best fitting option for you in all facets. So that's your first homework assignment, is to learn what you've got, financially speaking. The second assignment is to begin to get a sense of what you want to find in a community. And here's what I mean by that. Some communities, you want to make a list. This should all go on paper. Don't try to keep this in your head. This should all go on paper. And so some communities have 2 columns. There's going to be a must-have column. There's going to be a nice-to-have column. The must-have column, maybe Mary Jones is going to say, I ain't going to any community that doesn't have a pool. I don't want to have to get on the van in the wintertime and get taken to the Y. For some folks, that's perfectly fine. Other folks, they don't care about swimming at all. But Mary wants to be able to swim every day, and she's not going if there's no pool. And if there's no pool, that's a deal breaker. That's a must-have. Mary may say, I would love to be in a community that has an art studio and that brings in resident artists and has classes. That's not a deal breaker for Mary, but she would love that. That's a nice to have. So you want to begin to think about what are your must-haves, what are your nice to haves, and think about your priorities. So some people will say, my top priority is the track record and the reputation of the company that owns the community. Some people will say, my top activity is activities. I want a very vibrant calendar of activities. Some people, that may mean bingo every night. Some people, that may mean as little bingo as possible. For some people, it may mean classes and speakers and lectures and off-site trips. For some people, it will be art classes, music, on and on. You want to think about what are the activities that are important to you, and where does activities fall on your priorities list. Somebody will say, the most important thing to me is food. And that is reasonable if you think about it. If you're going to be eating 3 meals a day, perhaps anywhere from 1 to 3 meals per day in a dining room, the food damn well better be good, quality, nutritious, and tasty. For some folks, not me, you can tell. For some folks, food just isn't that important. So maybe it's a cultural environment. Maybe it's a religious affiliation. So you want to start to think about your priorities. Okay? So those are my 3 suggestions of homework. And I can't urge you strongly enough to do this homework. So the right time to think about senior living is right now. The right time to make a move, in my professional and personal opinion, is as soon as possible. So I'll tell you what my experience was with my dad. My dad, we lost my mother, I can't remember if it was what year it was, but she was 84 years old. My dad was 88. My dad was Superman. I, honest to God, thought he was going to live forever. He was, when my mom died, in tip-top physical and cognitive health. And the most social person, one of the most social people I ever knew. So talking to my dad after my mom died, he was in Florida. He would say the same thing, like he was reading from a script every single conversation. How are you, Dad? How are you doing? Well, the days are awfully long, and the nights are longer, really. So, Dad, why don't we start to look at senior living communities? They're fabulous. I know what I'm talking about, Dad. This is my industry. They're pretty fabulous. You'd be the mayor of any community you moved into, Dad. No, I'm not ready. By the way, that's your next homework assignment. So many people will say, I'm not ready. You want to pull that apart and figure out, what does ready look like for you? Is ready a crisis? Is ready a health challenge that just came up? Maybe not at the crisis level, but impedes your quality of life. Is ready, I want more stimulation. I want friends around. I want activities at the tip of my fingers. So figure out what ready looks like for you. So my dad would say, I'm not ready. And this went on for several years. And then, surprise, surprise, at 96, there was a crisis. And thank goodness my brother was retired. He was able to go to Florida for 2 months and be with my dad in the hospital, in rehab, back to the house, putting home care in place, clearing out the house, listing the house for sale, overseeing the sale of the house, and on and on and on. And let me tell you, it did not make my brother happy. My brother loved my father, as we all did, with every fiber of our being, but he was not happy. And finally, we were able to move my dad up into an assisted living community out in Western Mass, where my brother lives. I visited my dad soon after he moved in, and I said, so Dad, what do you think? And what do you think he said? Why didn't I do this 5 years ago? This is fabulous. I wanted to kill him. And being the dutiful daughter that I was, I did not lunge at his throat. He taught himself how to play bridge at the age of 97. So that just illustrates the point I made some time ago. Do not wait. Okay. Let's talk about the finances. How many of you, there are 2 financial models in assisted living communities. Independent living communities are different, so we'll talk about both. In many, not all, and by the way, I'm going to say to you very often, in many, but not all, And the point is that there are so many differences from this community to that community to that community to that community. They're, in some way or another, they're all different one from the other. But generally speaking, here are the two financial models in senior living. How many of you are familiar with the concept of an entrance fee or buy-in community? Okay, maybe about a quarter of you. So here's how an entrance fee community works. And again, you'll typically see this in independent living, not usually in assisted living. An entrance fee is a large chunk of money that most people raise from the sale of their home that you pay up front before you even move into this community. You pay it once. And it can range anywhere from $350,000 to over $1 million, depending on the community you're looking at. That entrance fee is refunded to you or your heirs, whomever you designate as your beneficiary. That will be refunded to them to some degree, anywhere from a 50% refund to a 95% refund. And the time it takes the time that refund is issued is almost always tied to that community reselling or re-renting your apartment. And depending on the size of the community, some communities are sprawling and have 1,000 apartments. Some communities are small and have 60 apartments. So at any given time, the vacancy rate, the typical vacancy rate in a community is 20%. So 20% of 1,000 is a much larger number than 20% of 60. So depending on the size of your community, that will dictate how long it takes for your refund to be issued. By the way, the handout that I've given you is a lengthy list of the most important questions to ask when you are doing your research. So there's a whole bunch of questions around the entrance fee. How much is it? How long will it take for the refund? How much is the refund? And so forth. What are the terms and conditions around the entrance fee? Yes, ma'am.
You said refunded to your ears. What if you go into this community you don't like it?
Great question. What if you go into an entrance fee community and you decide to leave? The refund will be issued whether you, as the resident, leave the community horizontally or vertically. If you leave that community horizontally, if you get my meaning, that's the point at which your heirs will receive the refund. If you walk out of that community because you've decided to move to Fiji, that refund will be issued to you. Yes, the resident themselves can receive the refund, or if they have passed away while living in that community, their heirs. And you would designate on your paperwork when you move into that entrance fee community whom are the beneficiaries, and how do you want the refund to be divvied up. If there are 2 kids, maybe 50-50. If there are 3 kids, maybe a third and a third and a third. If you don't talk to that kid and you talk to, get me? You can designate who's going to get the refund and how much. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I'm single. I have 2 nieces. I have a limited amount of money. In the case like that, in the independent assisted scenario, can I stay there and run out my money?
Very important question. And before I answer that question, what is your name? Philela. Before I answer this question, let me finish my point and then I'll come back to this because that's a very, very important question. So an entrance fee community means you will pay that entrance fee and you will also pay a monthly fee. Your monthly fee covers utilities and services and amenities and so forth. So it's not like you're paying your entrance fee and you're done. you're paying a monthly fee on top of your entrance fee. Sometimes, not always, sometimes the entrance fee can lower the amount of your monthly fee. But again, not always. It depends on the community. The other type of financial model, and this is what's more typical in assisted living, is what's called a monthly fee community. It's strictly, you would pay upfront once what's called a community fee. The community fee can range from $2,000 to $5,000. You pay it once, it is not refunded. And it covers the costs to the assisted living community of bringing you into the community as a new resident. There are all sorts of things that that community will do in order to bring you into the community. So the community fee that you pay is it covers all of those costs. In addition to that community fee, again, you pay it once and it's not refunded. You pay a monthly fee. And again, your monthly fee in assisted living will cover utilities and services and amenities and meals, and it may or may not cover care. If it does cover care, it may cover 30 minutes of a day per care. It may cover an hour per day of care. If you're in memory care, it may cover up to 3 hours of care per day. So again, another great example of the differences, how many differences there are from community to community. And one of the most important things to take away with you today is, as you start your research, you want to ask questions. So now I'm going to tell you another funny little story. I was working in a brand new community. I was in the sales trailer. The community was under construction. A couple came in. She was looking for her parents. And she said to me, I have a lot of questions. I said, I'm a huge believer in information. You ask me every question you have. No kidding. She took a list out of her purse, like in a movie, that was like this long. It looked like a CVS receipt. And by the way, her husband was kind of a trolly, short, a little bit of a funny-looking kind of a guy. Very nice, very smart, but he was no Cary Grant. But who is? So Andrea said to me that she had a lot of questions. I said, start. Ask me the first question. 3 hours later, her husband said, I was tall and good looking when this conversation began. So my point to you is, do not be shy. Do not think there's anything such as a small question, a dumb question, an unimportant question. You ask every single question you have. Write your questions down, write the answers down. Very important. Yes, sir. Also a very important question. Let me come to your question first, and then I'll come back to you. Before I answer your question, I will make sure I covered all of the facets of cost. I'm pretty sure I did. So, what happens, and this is a very often asked, and understandably so, very important question. What happens if I run out of money? What happens if I outlive my financial resources and outlive my money? My father-in-law just died in November at the age of 101. And he had outlived his financial resources. So, and it happens because people are living longer and longer. And of course, there's, a wide range of everything from bottomless pockets to, real financial constraints. It depends on the community. There are some communities that are nonprofit communities. Perhaps they have an endowment even. I worked in a community that was in this category. They had an endowment, and on a case-by-case basis, it was not a policy across the board, it was case-by-case basis, if someone outlived their financial resources, they would allow them to remain in the community. It's going to depend on a bunch of factors. But sometimes it can happen that you can remain in that community. There are some communities that have a resident-funded fund that will be used to help seniors who may be coming to the end of their financial resources. Will it pay all of your costs? No. They will pay a portion of your costs that may enable you to remain in the community. So there's no hard and fast answer to your question. It depends on the community. It depends on your personal circumstances. It depends on the policy and the financial structure of that community. And very important to know, when we moved my father-in-law up from Florida, he had next to nothing, and my family, my husband and me, my husband being my father-in-law's son and his sister, we were not in a financial position to cover the costs, private pay, of any senior living community. There are communities that are designed in part for lower income folks. So there are communities that participate with Mass Health. And you have to qualify financially, you have to qualify medically. Typically, they have a set number of apartments in that community that are designated for Mass Health. Not the entire community, but a set number of apartments. And there's almost always a wait list in those communities. So here's another very important suggestion. If you are not rolling in dough, then you may decide, and if if there's longevity in your family, if you're in great health and so forth, you may decide to do the research and find out which communities participate with Mass Health and get on their wait list. There may be no cost, there may be a nominal cost, and typically you can stay on a wait list for as long as you like. And typically you do not lose your place on that wait list. They'll skip over you if you say, I'm not ready, or I don't need it yet, thanks so much. So that's something very important to keep in mind. Additionally, I will add, I'll come back to you, there's a phenomenal program that sometimes communities that participate with Mass Health offer, which is called PACE, P-A-C-E. And the PACE program, in exchange for your agreeing to have all of your health care provided by PACE, all of it, dental, hearing, vision, medical, everything, they will cover almost in full the cost of living in that neighborhood. My father-in-law was on the PACE program, and we expected nothing from the PACE program. This is a state-run program. Our expectations were that it would be, at best, mediocre care. We were very wrong. It was amazing care. So take comfort in knowing that there could be an option out there for you that will be a fine option. To answer your question, sir, how do you know that the company that owns the entrance fee community has the wherewithal to issue your refund? And part of the research you'll do is looking into that very question. So you're gonna look online at any given company, such as Benchmark or Ericsson. You'll find out who those companies are, and you'll find out what are the reputations. Have there been complaints? Have there been penalties and so forth? Yes. So that will help you know about how reliable they are. That's a question that Bill can answer in more depth. So I would suggest either Bill can answer that now or you can talk to Bill afterward. But that's a very important question. Typically my understanding is, and you tell me if I'm wrong, Bill, an entrance fee community takes in your entrance fee, and those entrance fees are used in part to refund another resident's entrance fee. It could happen that way. There are various financial structures that enable them to issue your entrance fee. But a really important question to that community is, when would I expect my entrance fee? And to ask them, how can you afford to make what if 20 residents leave at the same time? So those are questions to ask of the community themselves. But you can have a more in-depth conversation with Bill, and he can answer that with much more expertise than I can. Yes.
I was going to say, you said about Mass Health, you can go on a wait list, but don't you have to qualify?
Yes.
You have to be out of your facility before.
Hang on one second. Just so I don't choke in front of you all. Yes, you must qualify for Mass Health. And it takes time. That is correct. There are financial criteria that you must meet. And in assisted living, I don't know if there are medical criteria that you must meet to qualify for Mass Health.
There are, but the one thing with Mass Health, there's not a lot of community health that do this. Very few of that. Probably less than 10%.
So, but still, yeah, there are some out there, and Bill is the person that could help you identify those communities out there. But I do not believe that there's any medical qualification for Mass Health, but there certainly is a financial qualification. And you have to pretty much be at the end of your finances, at rock bottom. But certain things are also excluded from the financial look. Your home, for example, I think. So, by the way, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how to afford senior living. How many of you have long-term care insurance? Oh, God, you're wonderful, forward-thinking, brilliant, wise people. My husband and I looked into long-term care insurance when we were 60. And they said, well, that'll cost you $150,000 a year. And we said, no, thank you. So, good for you. And by the way, it's also very important to know that long-term care policies vary from policy to policy widely. So that's another good homework assignment. You want to talk to your carrier and just educate yourself about what are their, how does their policy work? How does your policy work? In most cases, there is a waiting period. I think it's typically 90 days.
30, 60, 90, that again is something you have to check on the policy.
Yes, 30, 60, 90 days, depending on this, depending on that, before they start to pay out the benefit. So you definitely want to learn about the policy that you have. How many, and they can really pay, depending again on the policy, they can pay, just a little bit, or they can pay a ton. I know you have a question. Hang on one second. How many of you are veterans or the spouse of a veteran? Fabulous. So, how many of you are familiar with a veteran's benefit called aid and attendance? What do you know? So, aid and attendance is a benefit that is available to veterans, even if they receive other benefits like disability benefits. This is a benefit that is designed to help cover the cost, and again, you have to qualify financially, and you have to qualify medically for this benefit. It's not designed to just bring somebody in to do your laundry. It's designed to either bring someone into your home or to cover the cost of care in your new home, which may be an assisted living community. And it's designed for supportive services, to help defray the cost of supportive services. For the veteran themselves, the benefit can be in the neighborhood of $2,200, $2,300 a month. For the surviving spouse, and this is a spouse who remained married to the veteran, did not divorce the veteran, the surviving spouse, their monthly benefit can be in the neighborhood of $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month. Yes. So There are different ways to find out about if you qualify for the veterans benefit. It's called aid and attendance. Yes, ma'am. Speak up.
Is that veteran benefit based on the percentage of disability the veteran has?
No, it has nothing It has nothing whatsoever to do with disability or lack thereof. It's strictly a separate standalone benefit. You could be receiving 100% disability benefit. This is on top of that. And your disability benefit will not be decreased or eliminated. It's standalone. There are lots of different ways to learn about the VA benefit, and that's another thing you want to start to learn about right away, because the process of applying for the benefit can be months long. I think I've answered all the questions that have been asked thus far. Am I right? Yes. Okay. Okay, so how do I know what constitutes the right community for me? So as I said, going back to your homework assignment, the right community for you is going to be different than the right community for you. So you want to start to think about, again, and put it all on paper. What are your priorities? What are you hoping to find? There are social butterflies who want to do everything there is to do and want to meet everybody there is to meet. And there are others who say, leave me alone, don't knock on my door, I'm fine. And then there's everybody in between. So you figure out, what is your personality? What is your nature? What's important to you? What do you hope to find? And what do you hope to avoid? I don't want someone knocking on my door to say, bingo, at 4 o'clock, we expect to see you. I want to do everything, but I don't need that level of, I don't need a helicopter friend, okay? And then the question is, how do I find the right community? And actually, that's going to be the last question we'll discuss. What's usually, so let me talk about numbers. What's usually included in the monthly fee? The numbers can range, and before I give you numbers, there are some communities that are on the low end of the price point scale, and they are able to charge less than most because they offer companion suites. So 2 people are going to share a suite. Each is going to have a bedroom. They're going to share a small living room. They're going to share a bathroom. They're going to share a kitchenette. And for some people, that's a perfect solution if their finances are really constrained. So in that respect, that community could be as low as $3,500, $4,000 a month. On the other end of the spectrum, there are those communities that offer every single bell and whistle you've ever heard of, and they're designed for folks for whom finances, are not an issue. And that community could charge $8,000, $9,000 a month. Memory care is always most expensive because of the level of care that they provide. So the price point spectrum is wide. Typically, for assisted living, independent living is almost always less expensive than assisted living. So typically for assisted living, you're in the $5,000 to $7,000 a month range. And that includes meals, that includes activities, that includes some level of care, that may include medication management, but most often that's an additional charge. So again, these are the questions to ask, but that's typically what's included in the monthly fee. Another important question is, does the monthly fee go up every year? And the answer is yes. Then the next question is, how much? Well, it depends. It depends on this community, it depends on that community. Is it a nonprofit? If it's a nonprofit, they may keep their annual increase lower. If it's, one of the most expensive communities out there, they may raise it 5, 6, 7, 8% a year automatically, no questions asked. So, but yes, you should expect an annual increase. Okay. So, the last question is, how do I find the right community? And basically that means, how do I get answers to every question that's on that list, to questions that might not be on that list that you might think of, to all of the things, all of the facets that I've talked about today, all of the things you need to know. How do I get the answers? There are several different ways to do it. You can do the research yourself. If you still have a Yellow Pages, you can go to the Yellow Pages. If you are a computer user, if you're computer savvy, you can go to your computer and Google senior living in the Walpole area, and a bunch will come up and you'll start to make phone calls. You want to keep a spreadsheet, you want to keep a list, you have all of your questions from this community to that community. If you're not computer savvy, you can have a child, a neighbor, a friend sit down with you at your computer, and you can do it that way. So some councils on aging will have a book, a senior blue book or a senior resource book that lists all of the communities, and in bullet points, in a grid, it offers this, it offers that, it offers that. You can use a book like that and start to, by the way, you will not, I won't let you, and I'll know, you won't ever choose a community without walking into it, without spending time in that community. You're not just going in to walk around and say, oh, gee, this looks nice. You want to walk in, you want to enjoy a meal, and you ask, can I come for a tour during lunchtime? Can I come during an activity? You want to see the folks that live there, you want to sample the fare, you want to, hugely important, you do not choose a community unless you've stepped foot into it. How many of you had kids go to college? How many of you took your kids on college tours? How many of you had the experience of walking onto a college campus and within the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes saying, no, this isn't it? Or, yep, this is exactly right. That's what this is like. We call it the 90-90-90 rule. Within 90 seconds of walking 90 feet into the community, you have formed 90% of your opinion based on how it feels. And that's what you want to go by. How does it feel? So you can make calls, schedule tours. You'll go on these tours. You'll keep your spreadsheet. And let me tell you, it is no easy process to do this research yourself, and here's someone who knows. It can be overwhelming to the point of making it impossible for plenty of folks. It's time consuming, it's confusing, but there are plenty of folks who do it and do it happily. So that's one way to do it. There are online placement services. How many of you have ever heard of A Place for Mom? Not that many of you. So there are services like A Place for Mom. There are several online. You might call them up, or you may think you're calling a community if you've been online and ABC community comes up and there's a phone number. If it's an 800 number, an 888 number, pardon me, it may route you to one of these placement services, and you won't know until they tell you or you ask. So these are services designed to take information from you. They'll take your name, your contact information. They'll ask you a bunch of questions about your budget, about where do you want to be geographically, what's your health situation, physical, cognitive, and so forth. And based on all the data they take from you, they'll recommend certain communities that you can look into. And they are fine services. They provide a service. What you need to know is that they will usually share, without telling you or asking your permission, they will usually share your name and your contact information with a bunch of communities who will start to call you. What's that? They will ask you, I don't know that they'll ask you granular detail about your finances, but they'll ask you, what is your budget? But it's also important to know that sometimes their advisors don't do the best job. And so you may say, my budget is $5,000 a month, and you'll get a call from a community that costs $8,000 a month. So it has its place. It serves a purpose. And it's also anonymous, faceless. The person you may be speaking to may be in another state. They don't know the communities in your area because they don't live in that area or work. So that's another way. The third way, and in my opinion, the very best way, is to use a professional advisor. And that's what Bill Cleary is. And first of all, as I said, I spent 15 years doing sales in senior living communities. And by the way, when you hear the word community, senior living community, the word used to be facility, assisted living facility. We think of that as the F word now. We don't, they're no longer called facilities, they're called communities because they in no way resemble a facility. There's nothing institutional about it. There's nothing medical or clinical in the setting. It's a wonderful community of senior folks living together in a communal living situation. So don't be confused when you hear assisted living community. And the word neighborhood will often be used for the traditional assisted living portion of the building or of the campus. And the memory care neighborhood will be the memory care portion of the building or the campus. So those are the terms you should be familiar with. So where was I? Oh, somebody. Okay, I got it. Oh my God, I'm a genius. So I spent 15 years doing sales in senior living communities. And in my 15, and I turned 70 I just turned 71. When I turned 70, I said, and that's a very high pressured job because you're responsible for the census in that community. And I said at 70, you know what? I've had enough of this. I'd like to do something else. I want to stay. I have to work. I want to work. I'm a type AAA personality, if you haven't figured that out. I'd blow my brains out if I had nothing but time on my hands, or I'd kill my husband, or both. And I wanted to remain in my industry. I love working with seniors. It's very important to me to help people. So Oasis was the place I went to see about working as an independent contractor on a part-time basis, though somebody said to me, clearly you don't understand the concept of retirement. So Oasis is, in my 15 years in this industry, one of the finest resources I have ever seen for seniors and their families, ever. And that is coming from my heart. And so I was thrilled to be able to go to work as their regional marketing consultant. So and there are other placement services out there. Oasis is by no means the only one. This is a concierge service. This is a free, 100% free service. We could work with Mary Jones and her family for 6 months. There's never a cost. This is a person-to-person service. So if you call Bill Cleary, he is going to sit down with you and your kids or whomever, your rabbi, your priest, your dog, whomever, and he will start to do what we call discovery. He's going to ask you a bunch of questions that have to do with what are your must-haves, what are your nice-to-haves, and if you don't know the questions to think about, Bill will help you discover what those questions are. He's going to learn everything he needs to know about you. What is your budget? What is your health situation? Where do you want to be geographically? Where do your kids live? Do you want to be out of state? Do you want to, maybe a daughter is working with her mother who lives out of state and wants to bring her here to Walpole. Whatever the circumstances are, all of the data that Bill collects from you will be entered into proprietary software that will tell Bill this community, and this community, check all the boxes for Mary. These are the communities that Mary should look at. Plus, our advisors live in and work in most cases live in, not always, in their territory. They know that they've been physically in these communities many times. They know the executive director. They know the health of the company. They know that this community has a pool. They know that that community has an art studio. They know their communities in granular detail. They can tell you, I'd rather you not look at this one because the company is struggling right now. They might tell you, the executive director just left. They haven't yet replaced her. So let's wait a minute. So they can tell you, Bill can tell you in granular detail, what are the communities that are the best fit for you. And he's going to make that determination based on his software and what he's learned from you about what you're looking for. And if you like, this is a very hands-on process. If you would like, Bill will call the communities on your behalf and schedule the tours. He'll call you back and say, ABC community can see you on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Will that work for you? Yes. Okay, I'll schedule that tour. And then if you like, Bill will accompany you on that tour, this community and touring that community and touring that community. Typically, you do not want to look at more than 4 communities, and even better, you want to look at 3. And once you've done the work with someone like Bill, you have narrowed the list to 3 or 4 communities, all of which would be an excellent fit for you. So Bill works very, very closely with you and whomever else you'd like to be part of the process to help you understand all of the things you need to know, help you answer every single question on these lists, and can help you find the community that will be the best fit for you and help you streamline, oh my God, streamline the process in a way that will make it very manageable. Let me tell you one difference between, this is the reason that I came to Oasis and not a different placement service. The only source of revenue for Bill is if he helps Mary Jones move into a community. There's no other revenue for Bill other than in that scenario. Well, let's say Mary Jones fell, broke a hip, went to the hospital, was discharged to rehab. She's finished with rehab. The rehab facility and Mary's daughter feel that Mary should transition from rehab to assisted living. She should not go home. Mary begs her daughter, please let me go home for 6 weeks with home care and see how I do. If I can't manage, then we'll revisit this conversation. Well, if Bill is working with Mary and her daughter, Bill will recommend several home care providers whom he has vetted and trusts and knows are dependable and reliable. Maybe Mary needs an accommodation in her home, a physical accommodation. Maybe it's a stair lift, right? Bill can recommend providers who can make that accommodation in her home. And there's no revenue for Bill in helping Mary and her family put those kinds of supports in place. 0. But it's the right thing to do. And from a business perspective, Bill knows that if he helps Mary and her family to that extent, when things change, and they will, they'll come back to Bill for placement into a community. Most placement services, all of the others that I know of, don't do that. And that's fair and reasonable. I'm not disparaging them for not doing this because there's no revenue for them in it. But typically, if Mary's daughter says to this placement service, I'm going to let my mom go home for 6 weeks, they'll say, good luck. I wish your mom all the best. And if something changes, give me a call. And that's the end of their involvement. We don't happen to do that. And that's why I went to work for Oasis, quite frankly. So, questions? Yes.
Could you repeat those monthly fees again?
Sure. So the monthly fees can range from $3,500 to $8,000 or $9,000 in traditional assisted living. $3,500 being the shared apartment. $8,000 or $9,000 being all the bells and whistles. Which one?
It's Balfour. They're from out of Colorado. Wow. So it's $15,000 for independent living.
And this is in Colorado, did you say?
Based out of Colorado. It's in Brookline. And the entrance fee for this community is it's a rental per month. They're charging $40,000.
So as I say, I know you have a question. As I say, there are all kinds of people out there. There are all kinds of people that can spend money like it's water, and so God bless them, and that's fine. I don't happen to be in that category, and I'm guessing most of you aren't either. So that's the range, to answer your question, ma'am. That's the range of monthly fees. No, independent living is often a little less than that. The range of independent living, I would say, is $4,000 to $6,000.
Again, it's gone up. So this year, like benchmark communities, we got 10% in their fee. So independent now can be up as much as 10.
It can be as much as 10, but that's unusual. And again, excuse me, ladies, don't make me separate you. What's that? That's a month. That's a month. But again, that's on the unusual side of things. That's not typical. And then memory care. Yes, that's very good to know. The closer you get to Boston, the more expensive, and that makes sense. Yes, ma'am.
Well, what I wanted to say that I don't think you addressed it, maybe you did, but if you're talking about one person.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, you are correct. So the fees that I've talked about are for one person. If a couple is moving into assisted living, I don't believe this is typically the case in independent living. If a couple is moving into assisted living, there is what is called a second person fee. And that second person fee can range from $800 a month to $2,000 a month. And it covers it covers utilities, it can cover meals, activities. Yes, ma'am.
I thought independent also. My husband and I moved into a unit. We pay more because we're each getting a utility.
Yes, you'll pay more for, oh my goodness, my top's torn. Yeah, but I digress. You'll pay more pretty much anywhere you go for two people. Your entrance fee is not affected as to whether it's one or two people. Yes, ma'am.
The other question I have in regards to these facilities,
Communities. I'm going to take $1 from you because you said the F word.
I appreciate and I thank you both for coming here and doing this. It's a very hard sell for us.
Oh, no question.
Because, as this poster says that my daughter gave me, I did some financial planning and it looks like I can retire at 62 and live comfortably for 11 minutes. I mean, that's just kind of keeping it light. But the concern I have is that my parents were in a wonderful, years ago, my mother died in 2013 at the age of 99. So I'm banking on her genes.
Exactly right.
Around.
That's exactly right.
And what happened is that the nursing facility that was on site was not, it was part of the deal,
Yep,
but it was run by somebody else.
yep. That's often the case. Yep.
That was a real problem.
So as you can see, as you've heard all of these questions, there are a million questions. There are a million questions in the naked city. Remember that? So first of all, I should have said this at the top. Bill and I both really thank you for coming. You've got plenty to do with your time. The fact that you've come to spend some time with us, we very much appreciate. You will have, as soon as the door hits you in the tushy on the way out, questions will start to pop like popcorn, and you'll say, oh my God, why didn't I ask this or that? Perhaps there are questions you have that you don't want to ask in a group setting, of course. So I'm available. You have my card. If you haven't got my card, I'll give you one. Bill is available for any questions. And I will just lastly say, carpe diem. Now is the time. Thank you. The question has been asked, where will I be next? Like on the Rolling Stones. If you email me, my email is on my card. If you email me, I'll tell you where I'm doing. Oh, yes, I'll be happy to let you know. I have to look at my calendar. I don't have it. Certainly. Thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. You look very familiar.